Okie doke. Chaf Dalet Amud Aleph. We were discussing the Mishnah of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov had said that there are, in addition to what we all agree upon, that sometimes a neder is not to be taken seriously, he says any time a person makes a neder because he's putting pressure on a friend to do something. Let's say you're putting pressure on a friend, I want you to come over and eat at my house. And the guy doesn't want to come. So the Mishnah had said that according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, if you make a neder saying, if you don't come over to my house, you're never going to get any hanah from me, or I'm never going to get any hanah from you, either one, so then that's not to be taken seriously. That's called nidre ziruzin. It's words of exhortation, and not really to be taken seriously as a neder. So the Gemara had said, well, we have two questions. Do the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, or is this his unique shita? And second of all, if they don't agree, who do we paskin like? The Gemara had tried to prove that the Chachamim do disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov by bringing a brisa that we saw yesterday. The brisa had said that if a person makes a neder saying that if you don't accept this gift for your son's wedding of 2 barrels of wine and a bushel of wheat, I'm never going to get any hana ever again from you. So the brisa had said that it's not a serious neder, but only because the person said, I'm doing this to honor you. And there you have an out, because if the other person says, you honored me enough by just offering it to me, and it's even more honor if I don't have to accept your gift, so then he's off the hook from the neders. The Gemara had made a diuk and said it's only because he's saying it lichvodcha or kavodi. He's only saying it because out of honor, an attempt to honor. And if the recipient says I am duly honored without accepting the gift, then you're off the hook for the neder. That implies that if he didn't recite that caveat of that it's for your honor, then it would be a valid neder. So you see that there is an opinion that disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So the Gemara says no. This brisa could be Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It could be that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov will agree that this is a serious neder if you don't say the caveat about honor. Why? Because in this situation, the person who's placing the pressure and making the neder could have received multiple favors already from the other guy. And his attitude is, I don't want to be treated like a dog who just takes and doesn't give anything back. And out of a fit of frustration, he says, but in a sincere way, you have to take this gift, because if not, I'm never going to take any other gifts from you ever again. That's why we take it seriously, even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And therefore the Gemara says, you can't prove from this brisa alone that we have a party who disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Now let's look at the next brisa. Tashma. Ha'omer lachaviro, konem sha'ata nenes li im iyatano saying livni kur shel chitun ushtei chavuyos shel yain. Here it's the opposite. Here a guy says, you're never going to get any other more favors from me, you're never going to get any hana from me if you don't give me provisions for my son's wedding. I expect 2 barrels of wine and a bushel of wheat from you. Now this is the flip case. The previous case is the guy making the neder is pressuring the other guy to accept the gift. Here the guy taking the neder is pressuring the guy to give him a gift, which sounds a little bit chazerish, but wait 1 second, not necessarily so. Not necessarily. You have to know, we're just parachuting into a 20-year-long relationship. So you'll see in just a second. So in that situation, Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir says, Asur ad sheyite, that the neder sticks, and if the guy doesn't give the bushel of wheat and the 2 barrels of wine, so the neder holds, and the guy's not allowed to get any hana from the person who took the neder. So you see clearly that Rabbi Meir disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that it's not a serious neder, and Rabbi Meir says it is a serious neder. But the fact is that Rabbi Meir is a yachid, just like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is a yachid. So that's not what we were trying to prove. We were trying to argue that the Chachamim as a whole disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Let's see what the Chachamim say. The Chachamim omrim, af ze yachol lahatiras nidro shelo al pi chacham sheyachol lomar hareini ki'ilu hiskabalti. That the Chachamim say this vow can be annulled without getting a formal hataras nedarim, but only because the person who makes the neder can say, I love you so much, I'll make it as if you gave me the gift, even if you didn't give it. Which means that if the person is still standing on ceremony, and he doesn't consider it as if he received the gift, then it is a valid neder, even though, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, nedarim of this kind are always nidrei ziruz and are not to be taken seriously. So, taima da'amar hareini ki ilu hiskabalti halav hachi nederu. So we see that without that caveat that a person could always say, "It's okay, I'll consider it as if you already gave it to me." So then it would be a valid neder. So this seems to be not like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So who is it? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, nidrei ziruz avi. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says it's always an exaggerative neder and it's not serious. Elalav rabbanan upligi. So this shows that the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and they say that unless the person who took the neder says Keilu hiskabalti, it's as if I've already received it, then it is a serious neder. So you see that there's such a machlokas. So the Gemara says lo, not necessarily so. La'olam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, umoda Rabbi Eliezer b'hayda nidra havi mishum da'amar le lav malka ana demahanina lach ba'at lamahanasli. Here it's the opposite. Here it could be that even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would agree that this would normally be a serious neder without any caveats and provisions. You know why? Because we could be talking about a situation where the person making the neder is sick and tired of having to constantly give and give and give to his friend. He says, I've given you for the last 20 years, and you've never given me anything in return, and you're just as wealthy as I am. So here's the deal, my friend. I'm making a chasana. If you want to provide for my son's chasana, very well and good. That shows me you're a friend. But if not, and what are you, going to treat me like a king that I just give and I get nothing in return? That's not a friendship. And if you're not going to give me anything for my son's chasana, then forget it. And you're never going to get anything else from me ever again. That, if you frame it in that fashion, then even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would agree that that's a serious neder. So you see, like I said, it all depends on the context, that even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says that many times nedarim are not serious, but in this case it would be serious. Amar le Mar Kishisha bereda Rav Chisda Rav Ashi Tashma. He says, okay, so Mar Kishisha says, listen to the next brisa. Nidrei onsin. He says there's a certain category of nedarim that are brought in the Mishnah. We'll see this later on, where there's a tanai placed on the neder, where the person making the neder expects the tanai to be fulfilled, and if the tanai is not fulfilled, or in other words, if the tanai is fulfilled, the neder is chal. But let's say the person that he took the neder against tried to comply with the requirement that he placed upon him, but a mishap occurred and he wasn't able to fulfill it. So there, the person taking the neder doesn't intend for the neder to be chal. So what's an example? Hidiru chaveru sheyochal etzlo. He says, I take a neder that if you don't come and dine with me tonight, you're never going to get any hana'ah from me ever again. But what happens? So the chalahu o chala bino o she'akavo nahar. If, let's say, the fellow sincerely wanted to come and was planning to come for dinner, but he got sick, or his son got sick, or let's say he tried to get there, but the river overflowed and the bridge is out, and he can't get to the guy's house. So in that situation, the noder, the person making the neder, doesn't intend for the neder to be chal in that case, because he sees his friend sincerely wanted to come. So halav hachi. So we see, but if it were not for the fact that it was an oines, that there was some mishap, the neder would be a valid neder. So money, who does this brisa go like? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov ziruzin havi. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, even if the bridge was not out, and the guy decided never to show up, the neder would not be chal, because it was an exaggerative neder in the first place. So elalav rabbanan upligi. So you see, this goes like the Chachamim, and we see that the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So the Gemara says no. La'olam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov umi savras da adre mizamna lizamina. Lo, the zamina adre lemizamna. He says, you got the story wrong. It's not the standard case where a guy says, you better come for dinner at my house tonight, and if not, I'm going to assur everything of mine on you for the future. That's not what happened. It's that the invitee, the guy who's going to be the prospective guest, says to the host, how come you haven't had me over your house all this time? So the host says, okay, come tonight. So he says, "The Amar lei mizamtzas li lusuda zeich." So he says, "You're going to invite me over to your house finally?" Amar lei in. So the host says, "Yes, okay, come over tonight." Neder ze alecha. You swear? You swear that you're going to invite me over to the point where if you don't have me over, then your possessions become usher to me? And vinodar. And Taka, the host says, "Yes, I make a neder." Now, in this situation, you can't say it's nidre ziruzin. It's only a neder that's made in order to encourage and motivate and inspire the other guy to fulfill the invitation. Because here, the guest is the one who's initiating the invitation. It's clear from the context that he wants to come over and eat dinner at the guy's house. So the only reason why the fellow who's the host took the neder in the first place was because he meant it seriously. Even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and then if a mishap occurs and the invitee, who was the one who initiated the invitation in the first place, can't make it, then we all understand that the neder is not a neder. So this does not prove that there's someone who disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov.
Isn't that sort of like a neder under duress? Like, the guy says, it's like you swear, like just imagine kids say, you swear, of course, you're being polite, right?
So the Gemara doesn't entertain that. I mean, I hear what you're saying, that maybe you could argue the guy's taking a neder only because he's embarrassed and doesn't want to embarrass the other guy. But here the Gemara says, no, just the opposite. Sometimes, if you feel, people are so polite in the Babylonian society over here that you have to pressure people to come to your house. So if the guy is putting the pressure on you to have him over your house, you're only too happy. So what's the point of taking a neder? So the point of taking a neder is because you want to reinforce it yourself. That's the assumption of the Gemara. Yeah. Toshma. Yeser al Kain Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Haomer lechavero konim shani nehen elach im iyatom isareach etzli v'tochal imi paschama v'tishta imi kos chamin. He says more than this. Now this brisa is a continuation of the previous two cases that we saw, where the first case was where a guy says, my possessions will be usher to you if, I'm never going to get any benefit from you if you don't accept a bushel of grain and 2 barrels of wine for your son's chasana. The second case was, all of my possessions will be usher to you if you don't give me a bushel of grain and 2 barrels of wine for my son's chasana. And then Yeser al Kain, more than this, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said that even if we're not dealing with large quantities, even if we're only dealing with a modest proposal, a modest invitation, where a person says, listen, I need you to come over to my house for dinner tonight, and if you don't, I take a koinum, I take a neder that you're never going to have any benefit from me. If you don't dine with me, eat with me some warm bread, drink with me a warm glass of wine. He says, Vahala hikpid kinegdo, if the invitee refuses and he doesn't accept the invitation, af elu nidre ziruzin, then this too is considered to be not a sincere neder, even though it wasn't a large request, and therefore there's more of a reason to say that he meant it seriously. But no, he doesn't mean it seriously, and therefore it's not a valid neder according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That's like our Mishnah had said. It's really done to pressure the guy to come to dine with him. V'lo hodu lo chachamim, and the chachamim did not agree to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So ma'ilo hodu lo chachamim. So what does it mean that the chachamim did not agree? Lav de afilu b'kamaisa. This implies that even in the first cases also, where it had to do with pressuring the guy to either accept the wine and the grain, or to pressure the guy to give the person wine and grain. In both of those cases, in all the cases, it says v'lo hodu lo chachamim. The chachamim disagreed with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov in toto. So therefore you see that what? So Shma Mina, Rabbanan, Pligi Rabbanan Olei Shma Mina. This is conclusive proof that the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. But my Havi Allah, but what was the upshot? In other words, now that we've established that there's a machlokes, who do we paskin like? What was said about this? So Tashma, Damar Ravuna, Halachak Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. V'chein Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava, Halachak Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Now, the problem that I have with this Gemara, I think I mentioned this incidentally yesterday, is that in other Gemaras we say, Mishnas Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov kav v'naki. Anytime you find Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov cited in a Mishnah, it is ironclad and clear. In other words, there's no ambiguity. We always paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, because his teachings were lucid, clear, and were unambiguous. Why the Gemara doesn't cite that over here, I don't know, other than the possibility that this is another indication that Maseches NEDARIM stands alone. In other words, we've seen already that the language of Maseches NEDARIM is variant in form. It indicates to us that the authors of Maseches NEDARIM may be different from the authors of the rest of Talmud Bavli. And that's why you may not find the same level of connectivity to other rules that we find throughout the Bavli. But the bottom line is that we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That's the conclusion of the Gemara, and therefore, even putting pressure on a person by taking a neder just to dine with you, to have dinner with you, is not a serious neder, and therefore it doesn't need hataras nedarim. Let's go on to the next Mishnah. Nidrei Havai. Now we get to another category of neder which does not need hataras nedarim, not just nidrei ziruzin, nedarim that are made to exhort someone else to take action, but just stam nonsensical nedarim that you say, I hereby prohibit bread or wine upon myself if X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z is really clearly, inherently you can tell that the condition is a ridiculous condition. So for example, he says, Omar koinam im lo ra'isi baderech hazeh ka'olei Mitzrayim, im lo ra'isi nachash kekoras beis abad. He says, I take a neder and asr something upon myself if I didn't see on this road 600,000 passers-by, like the number of Jews who left Egypt, which is an exaggeration. Clearly, it's inherent in the statement that there were not 600,000 people that could have possibly come down this road. Or if he says, or if I take a vow, if I didn't see a snake the size of a house beam, the central beam on the roof of a house, which is huge. Right? Now the Ran points out that in both of these cases, the reason why we don't take it seriously could be for two different reasons. The first statement we don't take seriously because you can clearly see that there's no way you're going to get 600,000 people to walk down this road. It's too narrow. The population demographics don't support that possibility. But what about a snake? So a snake, he says, that also inherently you see that a snake can't be that big. But there's more than that, because the guy may be saying something that there's another feature about that snake. Maybe that it was as hard as the beam of a roof or something to that effect. He's not necessarily saying that it's the same size. But the point is that what the guy is saying is like the Ran says, he says, "Da'afal gav devadai shikra ka'omar." He says clearly the guy is saying sheker. Dafilu b'derech guzma lo shaykh lamemar hachi afilu hachi aperos mutar mishum damdinu le'ledaite shelo lesaros aperos niskave. We assume that the guy never had intention to prohibit the object upon himself. She'im kain lo hayelo litlos yisro b'tanai ela hayelo losram alav b'muchlat. He says there's no reason in this case for someone to say the peros will be usher upon me if the snake was not like the crossbeam of the house. Why would a person make a neder in that way? If you want to prohibit produce upon yourself, so prohibit produce upon yourself. There's no reason to connect it to something that has no relevance whatsoever. And that's the reason why it's not a binding neder.
We say in English, you'll get your money when pigs fly. We have that.
Right, right. Yeah, so clearly that's not meant seriously. If the guy were to be able to attach wings to a pig and make it fly, you can't say that the guy's got to make good on paying the thing, right? So Tana, Nidrei Havai Mutarin, the Brisa now says, and there's a major discrepancy in the Girsa of this Brisa. Major discrepancy, big machlokus in the Rishonim, what the Girsa is over here. So the Brisa says that Nidrei Havai, nonsensical Nedarim, do not need a Hataras Nedarim, and Shvuos Havai, and what about a Shavua, where a person says, I swear, instead of saying, I take a neder. So in that situation, you have the Rambam says, also Mutarim, and the Ran says, or the Rashi says asurin. So heichi dami shvuos havoy. So how do you understand, what is the shvuos havoy? What's the example? So ilay medamar shvua im lo ra'isi b'derech hazeh midam ka'amar. He says, if you're going to tell me that a person says, I hereby swear, if I didn't see 600,000 passers-by on this road, so that's a meaningless statement. And like the Ran and Rashi say, he says that's not the way people formulate a shavua. What are you swearing? You're swearing, I swear what? What are you swearing? I swear that I did. If I didn't see, what does that mean? So Amar Abaye da Amar Shavua Shira'isi. So Abaye says, you swear that you saw 600,000 passers-by. And there, so again, there's a machlokas whether we say that's binding or whether that's not binding, which means that if in fact we discover that what you said is not true, according to one opinion, you'd have to bring a korban for swearing falsely. And according to the other version, you wouldn't have to, you're not liable at all. So Amar le Rava imkain lama li lameimar. So Rava challenges, he says, if it's such a straightforward shavua, then why does it even have to be mentioned in the Braisa? Either because you consider it to be a straightforward shvua shav, in which case the Torah says, do not swear falsely, and if you do, you have to atone for it, so that's clearly a violation. Or according to the other version, according to the other girsa, it's so blatantly not a shvua because it's no different from, it's just a ridiculous statement. So, va'od, dumya deneder kitani. And furthermore, this brisa seems to be saying that a shavua that's done in the same way that a neder is done is what we say is the issue in question. So the way that you formulated it, Abaya, you swear that there were 600,000 passers-by, that's not what a person says when he takes a neder. He says, I hereby prohibit an object upon myself if I didn't see 600,000 passers-by. That's the way it's supposed to be formulated, is to say the same thing by Shvuah. So Ela Amar Rava, Ba'omer ye'asru peros ha'olam alai b'shvuah im lo ra'isi b'derech hazeh ka'oli mitzrayim. Therefore, what you're saying is, I hereby swear that I will not eat any produce, any vegetation in the entire world if I didn't see 600,000 passers-by. So that's where we say, and again, it's a machlokes which version we subscribe to. Either that's a valid shvuah, so therefore, since it's not practical to abide by it, you're going to have to bring a korban shvuah, or alternatively, it means that it's completely not a valid shvuah because it's so inherently ridiculous that we know from the inception that it's not a valid shvuah. So Amalei Ravina l'Ravashi v'dilma haygavra kina d'shum shani chaza v'asik lahon shema olei mitzrayim v'shapir mishtaba. So Ravina says to Ravashi, this whole discussion is predicated on the fact that saying that I saw 600,000 passers-by on this road is clearly impossible, and therefore we don't take the neder or the shavua seriously. He says, but why should that assumption be true? Maybe when the guy said, I saw 600,000 passers-by, he's referring to 600,000 ants, and not human beings. And sometimes, when you have a colony of ants, you could have 600,000 ants walking down the road, carrying a big piece of cheese or something, It could happen. So maybe that's what the fellow means. And in his own mind, when he says passers-by, he really means ants passing by. So Amar lei ki mishtaba adaita didan mishtaba va'anu lo maskina nafshin a shum sham ni. So the Gemara answers, no, you can't say that. Whenever a person uses language, he can't say, well, the language that he used, for us it implies human passers-by, but in his own mind he meant ants. You can't say that. A shvuah or a neder only has relevance from a linguistic point of view if the language that has come out of his mouth is interpreted by the average person listening in a certain way. And therefore it has no meaning whatsoever if the average person hearing it interprets it as human beings, and then it clearly is, from an inherent standpoint, it's clearly that it's impossible. He can't say, well, I was really serious because I was thinking ants when I said passers-by. No, sorry, whatever mishagas is going on in your head has no bearing on the externality of the shvuah, which is clearly, from all external features, is referring to human beings. So the Gemara now says, "Ve'aldaita denafshe lo avid inish demishtaba." Oh, really? You mean to tell me that whatever's going on in his head, his mental process is not relevant when it comes to Shavuos? V'hatanya, look at the following brisa. Kishein mashbiyan oso, omrim lo heve yodea shelo al tanai shebelibcha anu mashbiyan oscha, ela al da'atenu ve'al das beistin. So when a person has to take a Shavuot and beistin, let's say there's a financial dispute between two parties. Ruvain is the claimant, Shimon is the defendant, and Ruvain still has a promissory note to indicate that Shimon owes him money. Shimon says, I paid you, and then we just never tore up the note. So in certain situations, the Beis will require Shimon to take a Shavuot to swear that that's true. When we force him to take a Shavuot, we tell him in advance, you better realize that you can't play tricks in your head, because whatever shvuah you take is based upon our understanding of the shvuah, not upon your understanding of the shvuah. So la'afuke mai. So why did they need to tell that to him? Lav la'afuke da'asik lehei li'iskundari va'asik lahon shma zuzi. Maybe it's to tell me that if a guy says wants to take a vow that I don't owe you 100 zuz, in his own mind, the word zuz, he says, you know what? The word zuz could also mean little chips. It doesn't have to mean dollars. So it's true. I'm not swearing falsely, because when I say I don't owe you 100 zuz, I'm thinking about little chips of wood, or little, or monopoly money. I don't owe you monopoly money, or whatever it is. You know that old joke, I promise I'm going to give you $1 million. And so then it's okay, so give me $1 million. We did this all the time when we were kids. I didn't say dollars, I said doll hairs. Right? Right? You ever no, that never happened to you? I guess
it's Los Angeles.
Must have been a California thing. Right. Doll hairs, I said, not dollars, right? So isn't that what the Basin is telling a guy, basically, that you can't play shtick in your head and say, oh, I didn't really mean it, right? Or, like what's going on in the news, when a woman says, I'm an African American, What does that mean, I'm an African American? Oh, I identify as being black. But racially, what are you? Oh, I identify, right? No, you are what you are, and you have whatever comes out of your mouth, you have to be truthful, and it's got to be interpreted the way normal people interpret it, not by the mishagas that's in your head. So you see, the Gemara says that's only in Beis Din where we make a person clarify that. But if a person were to take a private shavuah not in Beis Din, it sounds like it's based on whatever is going on in his crazy head. He's allowed to interpret. So the Gemara says no. He says, so it could be it's only because it's in Beis Din, but when it's not done in Beis Din and it's only relevant to yourself, then maybe the shvuah could be interpreted by the person. And he said, well, I meant ants. So therefore, the shvuah is a valid shvuah. The neder is a valid neder. So the Gemara says, lo. La'afuke mikanya derava. Now, the Gemara is saying no. In all instances, whether it's in Beis Din or outside of Beis Din, whenever you take a neder or shvuah, the words only have substance as far as the way people understand those words. It's got nothing to do with how you, in your own crazy mind, interpret the words. But the reason why the Beis Din makes a person take a shvuah, stafka when he's in Beis Din, about make sure you understand that your words count based on the way we understand it, and not the way that you understand it, is to exclude the following story. It's talking about the cane of Rava. The word cane, I mean a walking stick, C-A-N-E. So what do I mean? De'ahu gavra da'avamasik b'chavri zuzi, asu lakami de Rava. So there was Ruvain was a creditor, and Shimon owed him a lot of money. So Ruvain comes to Rava to take him to Shimon to a din Torah. So Amalei Lalova Zil Prali. He turns to the defendant and he says, pay me what you owe me. So Amalei Paraticha. So Shimon says, I paid you already. So Amalei Rava Imkein Zil Ishtabale de Parate. So Rava says, okay, take a vow, take a shavua that you paid him. So Azal va'aisi kanya v'yoiv zuzi begavei b'hava mistamech va'azil. So what Shimon had done, anticipating that this was going to happen, he did the following ruse. He took a walking stick, hollowed it out, put coins in the walking stick, and sealed it up. And then he comes walking to the Beis Din, leaning on the walking stick, like he needs to walk with a stick. Comes to Beis Din. Amar leila malvin nekot haikanya biyodach nasib sefer Torah vishtaba depare kol madahavale biyode. He says, okay, I got to swear on a Bible, right? That's the rule. And you go to court. do me a favor, Malva, would you mind holding my cane for a moment while I hold on to the Sefer Torah and take a shvuah? So while the Malva is holding on to the cane, the Lovis Shimon swears, he says, I swear that I have given to Ruvain everything that I owe him. And it's true. He's not lying falsely. So, Hahu Malva Rogaz V'Tabra Lahu Kanya V'Shtape Chana Zuzu Le'ara V'Shtachech D'Kushta Ishtaba. So the Malva got so upset hearing the Loiva take what he perceived to be a false vow, a false oath. So he gets so upset, he takes the walking stick and zetzes it over the table. The stick breaks, and all the coins spill out. And then it turned out that the guy wasn't lying. He had given to Ruvain all the coins when he told him to hold his walking stick. So the point is, that's why the Beis Din makes the guy take a shvuah. Not because you're going to reinterpret the meaning of the word zuz or the meaning of the word passers-by, but rather because you're going to try shtick. You're going to try this ruse to say, I have given to him, but you have to understand, if we don't perceive it that way, that you've given it to him because you're playing games with us, then your shvuah will be a false shvuah. And that's totally different from what we're talking about over here, where a word is a word, a rose is a rose, and a passerby is a passerby. Have a wonderful day. And a cane is